Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started this morning with our P6 calculator. I'm Nicole Jardin. I'm the founder and CEO of Emerald, and I'm joining you today from Calgary. So let's talk about P6 calculator, why we built it. Let's touch on some of the common struggles that our clients were facing when they were running P6. So P6 is a fantastic tool. It's got so much power, capability, but sometimes there are enhancements that we can do quite easily to make the tool even better. And that's really what P6-Calculator does. It's got a bunch of little utilities that we've put together, and we bundled them into a package called P6-Calculator. And they do all sorts of little functions that automate things primarily in P6. So I'm going to show you some examples. These are examples, and we've got many more. And I'm sure if there were things that your team needed and we worked on them together, we could add them to the calculator readily. So that's really a food. Think of this as a food for thought type of presentation. So let's talk first and foremost about whether or not you're integrated. And I'll explain why I'm asking this question after we get a few responses in. So we have quite a few clients that are integrated. They have their P6 talking to their other systems. So those can vary quite a bit. They can be accounting systems. They could be asset management systems like SAP, Maximo, JD Edwards. We've integrated to Oracle Financials, Fusion, many others, Discover, QuickBooks. We did our own for QuickBooks. We've integrated to Zoho. So we've integrated to many tools. So the reason I'm asking that is because often one of the struggles that people have is they would like to have more information inside of P6 than what they have, but they think that putting that in would be impossible for their scheduling team to keep up with it. Things like resources or things like costs. And that is not necessarily true, especially if you've got automations and integrations. So these are things to think about to be able to expand what you're doing in P6 without overwhelming your scheduling team. So one of the things that we have, and I'm going to show you in examples here, is by taking the data from other systems, and I'll use the example of taking it from like a Maximo, so like a asset management tool where you put in generally work orders and tasks that need to be accomplished to maintain your equipment, for example. That is something we do a lot of for clients that are doing maintenance type work for sure, turnaround type work for sure, have plants and assets to maintain. So this saves the team time typing all the work orders in, but work orders just keep coming. They're not going to stop coming. So it could overwhelm your P6 system. So I will show you some examples of auto archiving, auto statistic counts so that you've got information readily available. I'll go through some of those. So that's why I wanted to ask that question. So let me touch on another question here. So what parts of P6 do you use? So when I'm asking that, everyone uses it for scheduling. But not everyone necessarily uses it for scheduling, resources, and costs. So that's why I just thought I'd throw that question out there to see, what are people doing? Now, a few years ago, Oracle did do a little poll with their clients, and at the times, this was probably about 5 years old, maybe a little older, the number of people doing resources was about 60 to 70% of the users, and costs were in the range of 30 to 40% of the users. Okay, so costs certainly aren't always used in P6, but if you do want to explore that, I'm going to touch on some examples of the kinds of things we've done with costing. Okay, so again, the potential to expand the offering of what you can do in P6 and still have a good return on investment exists. It's all about kind of how you go about making that data available and using it. Now, a challenge that people have is to make sure that once they get all this data in P6, that they can get it updated. So again, this is where integrations can come into play and automation. So I'm going to show you some automations on things that we can do to auto schedule all the projects. So again, if you've got a large program that you're running and you're receiving work orders perhaps from other systems, you may be getting updates from other systems. You want to make sure the scheduling is occurring regularly. So I'm going to show you some auto scheduling. I'm going to show you some auto loop detecting, and we'll look at these different concepts of things that you can do with P6-Calculator. Now the idea here is P6 that can become a central hub for more than just dates. So that means that you can start to share this data with an extended team. So it can become a very, very key central repository of data. The database, of course, is strong with the Oracle backend, or if you use SQL. We still find Oracle's better, but if your team is standardized on SQL, it does work well, and it can hold a huge amount of data. So it can become a very key central hub that you can then use and piggyback reporting on. So our P6 Reporter is the tool that we built that helps automate snapshotting of data, which lets you then take that data. We've built some very standard sort of query developments so that we can create graphics very quickly in other systems. So Power BI, Tableau, business objects, etc. So the idea is to start to plug P6 into your corporate standard system instead of having its own little island where it's only the scheduling team using it. P6-Calculator changes that dynamic, helps you use the data in more automated ways and extend it out. Okay, so those are the sorts of things that I'm going to show you, and some of the benefits of using a tool like Calculator to extend what you're doing in P6. So let me touch on how it works, and then I'm going to jump into P6 and I'm going to show you some examples. So the way P6-Calculator works is we define what we're going to calculate. That could be existing fields in P6. It could be user-defined fields off of existing fields that we calculate. And I will show you some exchange rate examples in costs. Then you can then take that data, roll it up, roll it down. So something that's it's not an easy thing to do is if you have a user-defined down at the resource assignment level, how do you see that at the activity level? How do you see that at the WBS level? How do you see that at the project level? So that's not easy to do in P6. You need to use global changes or do some other methods. So we've automated all that. So now these fields can be very, very usable. And that's where the automations will come into play. And then you can use that data at various levels across the system. So now it becomes more usable. Having something totaled up at the project level is a super way to demonstrate that to a senior manager who doesn't necessarily need to dig into all the details. And then you might have a superintendent or a foreman who wants to see something that's more at the WBS level. Okay, so this is where the calculator really takes advantage of the structures in P6 and lets us push data all in many, many different manners automatically. So your team doesn't have to do it. That's the key. Okay, so I think I'll go ahead and jump into P6 and I'll start walking through some different examples. And again, as I mentioned, this is very much a food for thought kind of presentation, because there's many, many more that I can show you. And there might be some that you're interested in exploring, and then we can just explore those and see how this could come together. Okay. Now, the way that we sell this tool, it's per database and it's per calculation point. So it's not per user. So if you've got 10, 50 users, you don't have to license each user. We license the things that we're running. So the price point is pretty inexpensive. It could range from a few $100s a month for the whole team, to maybe a few thousand if you're doing lots and lots and lots of calculations and you've got a lot of projects. Okay, so it's pretty inexpensive tool, and the return on investment is usually there within even a few months, because you'll save the time of your scheduling team, or extra third-party team members that you have to hire because you're doing more things. Okay, so the value is usually there very, very quickly. Okay, so I'm showing you P6. So I'm going to start with an auto archiving example. So you've got more than one client using archiving, copying, automated within P6. So let's touch on some of the different scenarios. So you can archive a project, and archiving can include taking a backup into an XCR. It could also, depending on your circumstance, be grabbing that project and pushing it into a secondary database. Okay, so we have quite a few clients who have a secondary archive database, and this automates that process. We've got some clients who have copying automated between databases as well. So it's a similar concept. Now, we also have archiving, which will archive work orders or activities, WBSs and activities within a project. And it will archive them and essentially get rid of them. Okay, now getting rid of them can include pushing them into a secondary database as well, or just removing them from this existing database. So the way that you would deploy an auto archiving will depend a bit on your circumstances. But those are some of the different scenarios we've got actively being used out in the different industries currently with the calculator tool. So I'm going to show you an example where we're going to archive within a project. So let me kind of give you the lay of the land of how we usually set this sort of thing up, so that the users have some control over how the archiving will work. So let's say you're in an environment where you have work orders coming in from Maximo, for example, and they come in automatically. You schedule them in P6, and then the team executes on them and updates them. The updating might come from Maximo. It might come from a TAPS system like our barcode scanning. The updating could come from team member, whatever the case is. So then they're updated, and at some point they're closed. They get closed. And then what do you do with them? Well, you can leave them in P6, but of course, you're just going to get more and more and more work orders all the time. So some of our clients have the idea that they want them to be removed out of the database at some point. So you can see here we've had some that have auto archive run on them already, and we flagged certain work orders and activities to be deleted. So what we do is we have a little log here to let the user know what is going to be occurring. We don't just start deleting things from the database. We actually flag them, and if you want to look at them, you can see what's going to be archived and what's coming up. So I'm going to use this project, and I'm going to actually run the archiving on it. So the way that we usually work on this is, okay, well, what do you want to archive? So we might have a group that says anything that's been closed 30 days or prior to 30 days from now. Go ahead and archive it, or 60 days or 90 days. So it really depends on your reporting and how you want to leave the data in for some length of time before you archive it. So it could be 30 days in this example. Now, then the calculator is going to go and look for something inside of here that is the flag to let us know that it should be archived. So generally, it will be probably some sort of status. So this activity is it hasn't been started yet. This one looks like it's been completed, so you can see it there. Now, when it's completed, likely you'll have some sort of status also from your asset management system that will let you know it's completed. So it could be closed, it could be completed. It will really depend on how you've set up those other systems. So in this example, I'm going to go ahead and set some of these as closed. Okay, now that can be automated. Usually it's automated based on an actual start, actual finish, and so on. So I'm just doing it manually here for this example. So the idea here is we're going to expect the archiver to go ahead and tag these particular tasks as being able to be closed out of the system. Okay. So that's the general idea of how this would work. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and run this manually and tell it to start looking and monitoring inside of here for whether or not anything should be archived. Okay. So usually we have some criteria, and then we have a field to allow you as the scheduler to run it. But generally, this is the sort of thing that would be automated. So it might run every single night, and then it would let you know what is about to happen. So this one ran, it's finished, and I've got a little quick message here in my layout. So this would be a layout that I'd open maybe every morning. If I run it every night, I can open it every morning, and I can see what's meant to be deleted. And you might run it once a week as well. And then that might be something that you check every Monday morning, for example. So it says here that it's flagged for activities to be deleted. None of them have been deleted yet. They're upcoming. So they're going to be ready to be executed in an upcoming event. So that event would probably run in the night and clear things out. So that would be deleting them, and it would also potentially be copying them into a secondary database, depending on your approach. Okay. So that's one very simple example of one of the functions that we've got for archiving. So if you had to take care of a database that has work orders coming into it and new projects all the time, you can understand the potential value here to have an archive not only at the activity level, the WBS level, as well as at the project level. Okay, so those are all the different potentials that we've done with different clients. Okay, so that's one example. So let me just see if there's any questions. Could everyone hear Nicole? Oh, are some people having trouble hearing me? If it's the case, it may be on your side, depending on how you've got it recorded. So hopefully people can hear. Okay, let me go through a second example. Okay, so we did auto archive. Let's look at an auto resource rollup. Okay, so let's look at this example. So we have a lot of clients that have a lot of projects, many projects. And one of the utilities that we built for a electrical utility was a way for them to see which resources have been assigned up on the project level, so they don't have to open the project, and they wanted to see which resources have work coming up in the next upcoming time frame. So in this example, the time frame is the next 30 days. So go into all the activities, look at all the activities, and give me a list of all the resources that are coming up to be used in the next 30 days. Now, the benefit of this is if I need to search across many projects, I can search on this user-defined field that has the roll-up in it very, very quickly. Okay, so I'm going to show you how this works. So this is looking at the project, and it's looking at the resources that are coming up to be used on any activity in the next 30 days. So, you have activities and you have resources assigned. And in this layout, I've grouped them by the month so that I can get an idea of what's essentially coming up in the next 30 days. Now, 30 days from now is, of course, not exactly a month, but this gives you a bit of an idea of what's coming up. So it looks at the list of activities here, and it will put the resource that are coming up. So let me go ahead and assign maybe a few more resources onto some of these activities, and you'll get an idea of how this works. So I just assigned a few more, and on an activity that's coming up here, and why don't I go ahead and reschedule it? And I can make the data date this week. So I'll go ahead and make it Monday of this week, and that'll give you an idea. And then I will rerun the roll-up, the resource roll-up. So I can clear that off, very similar to what I did before. I let P6-Calculator know essentially to go ahead and get started on this. And it'll just look through all the activities coming up in the next 30 days. And this should give us a little bit longer list because I added a few additional ones. Okay. So I'll just keep refreshing this. So I'm running it ad hoc here. You can have it automated so it runs automatically every few minutes, or you can automate these to run every night, that sort of thing. So the idea is this should update and give me a newer list. And let's just give it another minute. It has a lot of functions to run, especially in our demo database. We have a lot of P6-Calculator functions set. So let's just see if it'll take a minute here. Now, this is another type of thing. There we go. So it added the commissioning one. It added this pipeline resource. So again, now I've got the latest and greatest list. So this can be valuable for reporting as well. So senior management might want to have an idea of what's coming up, and having just a quick list at the project level can be a very good starting point in a report. That doesn't mean that they won't necessarily want any more detail, in which case we would go into the resource assignment area and grab that. But this can be a great starting point for searching, for looking for foremen with the overloads and things like that. This gives a good starting point. So we've got it. This is just one example of a very simple roll-up automation. But this gives you an idea of the types of things that you can do. Now, as a scheduler, to do the same thing, you would have to open up the project. You might have to go into the resource assignment area, get a layout set up, and have that grouped and sorted. And that can be taking you half an hour to an hour every day to do it. So this roll-up being automated can save you a lot of time. Okay, so that's the idea with that example. So that's a second quick example of a calculator function that we've got deployed at many different clients. So then we have some clients who have automatic scheduling types of features turned on with P6-Calculator. So we have lots of groups who have multiple schedulers, and they have certain time frames to do their different updates and then their different reports. So, for example, you might have a commitment that every Monday you do all your updates from the week before, and by Monday, let's say end of day, you have to have them all in. So, um, we want to automate the scheduling to make sure all the data dates move for all the projects. And we want to make sure that when the data dates move, that everything works properly. So something that could cause you not to be able to schedule. Okay, so in theory, the scheduler does the updates, they move the data date, they schedule. Now, sometimes what happens is people forget to move the data date. The other thing is maybe one scheduler was away and they didn't get all their updates in, but we don't want their project to be left behind. So we want it to even update that one. Now, it might mean some of the updates may not be completely correct, but at least we've got the data date moved and they can go in and backfill the updates if need be. So if when you schedule in P6, if there's a loop in the schedule, it will not schedule. So that's why we built this little loop detector, so that we can we could flag why the computer could not automatically schedule the project, and we can flag to the users what happened here. Okay, so we can see a loop and we can flag the loop, and then we can let the give a message essentially for the scheduler so that they can go and try and see what's gone on with that loop. Okay, so this is what we want to see: no loops detected. So that means everything's good. The scheduling should work. But when we find this kind of problem where there were some loops, then the automatic scheduling can't work. Okay, so that's what we would see here, that we weren't able to schedule automatically. Okay, so let me go into this project and I will show you what it's finding. So Calculator can see that there's a loop and it can give us a flag. So I'll just switch to the loop detector layout and we can run through what it found. Okay, so I have some very simple examples so we can see the loops pretty quickly. So you can see that we've got a sequence of work and then we've got a circular logic tie. We've got the same thing here. We've got one here and we've got two in here, it looks like. So very easy to detect when you have a very small set of activities. When you have a large schedule, much more difficult. I was working with a scheduler years ago and turnaround, and he was building so much logic that he ended up with 200 loops and he started freaking out. He had to leave the trailer. He was so aggravated. So, when you're doing a lot of logic building, you can easily create some major loops and you can't schedule the project. So in this case, I can run through and I can fix those pretty easily and get the loop detector to automatically let us know. So I can fix these readily. So I'll fix one and I'll fix one more. Okay, so I can see very clearly that I've got a loop in here. And then I'll go ahead and rerun it on here. So same as before, I'm just gonna, clear the date and get it to run it again. Again, this is something that's automated, so it'll just keep running the loop detector, or I can force it to run it on here. And I didn't clear all of them, so I won't get to no loops were found, but hopefully I think there should be probably one loop left in this example. So again, so found one loop with 4 activities. So as expected, there's still one that I didn't clear. And when I go in here, it updated all the individual flags. So again, this helps in the layout very quickly find them in the activity screen. Okay. So I'd want to keep working on this to clear those loops out so that I could have my auto scheduling work. And this would allow me to get this last project caught up, cleared out of the loops, and I can auto schedule and get it into my reporting matrix that might be going out to Power BI or whatnot from there. Okay. Okay, so that's another little simple utility that we built that works really well and helps with folks that have the auto scheduling functions turned on. So let me show you an example of the sorts of auto scheduling that we've got set up. So in P6, you set it up in the web part of P6. There are some auto functions that you can do. But one of the things that we found is compensating them with Calculator can work well. So some of the functions that you have is you can auto schedule up in the job services. So that's one of the things that you can do. Now, what we found though is it doesn't always work properly on large databases with lots of projects. The data date doesn't always get set properly. So we've had this auto scheduling in part of P6-Calculator for at least 10 years. And we still find we're using it. The job services that Primavera Oracle has put in don't always work completely correctly and consistently. So we still use the auto calculator scheduling component with many clients. Now, the way that we usually set this up, so this is going to give you an idea of how you might also be able to use auto scheduling. We also have an auto XCR capability. So job services lets you do XML exports every night. Again, we also have auto exporting capabilities too. So if you want something that's reliable on getting exports out of your database, particularly if you're in the Primavera SaaS where you don't have control over some of your restoring that easily, this can be a very interesting function. So we've got it in Loader as well as Calculator. So we've got it in two of our tools. So let's talk about the concept of auto scheduling. So auto scheduling is to automate the scheduling. So that would, for our integrated clients, we usually auto schedule every day. For clients that have a large number of records, we might do it once a week. So the way that this works is you would define the data date that you want the auto scheduling to move to. So let's just say your group has a commitment to run schedule updates every single Monday. So you would choose the Monday component, okay, in this example. We're saying that the data date will be moved not only to Monday, but 8 a.m. every Monday. So that's what we're saying there. Now, in this example, we're going to run that every single Wednesday. So the idea here is they have up until Wednesday to get all their updates in. And on Wednesday, we're going to run it, but we're going to set the data date to Monday at 8 for every project in the database. So that's how that would work. So that's what this one is letting you see, that this was run this week, and it would have been set to the Monday at 8 a.m. Okay. Now, if there's a problem, like we just saw here, that we had loops in the project, so it could not schedule, we send a message to the scheduler. So every Thursday morning, basically, I would open this up and I'd see if there were any that had problems. I could preempt it too with the loop detector. I could run that on Wednesday midday so I could see if there were going to be any problems to preempt it as well. So this works really, really great with our clients that have lots of projects, lots of schedulers, and they want to have a consistent methodology of moving that data date, making sure that all the reporting that's going through P6 Reporter with our warehouse holds together. So this is part of the idea, is to automate that so it's always done in a consistent manner. Okay, now that works so well. It makes a big difference on all the automated reporting that we're sending into management. They know exactly how things are working. We can trace if there's anything that makes no sense because we can see it right away that maybe there was a loop, the project didn't get rescheduled, and they can fix it very quickly. Okay, so this is a huge, huge time saver, and it also improves the reporting out to the management. The consistency of it has gone up considerably. So that's been a big, big win on automating this. Okay, so let me show you another one. So I'm going to show you 2 or 3 more. Auto counting. So again, we've got clients who have a whole bunch of reasons why they want to count certain statistics. So one of the examples I'm going to do here is I'm going to count work order numbers. Now you can count just about anything. You can count the number of resource hours and total those up. You could have full-time equivalent counting, which could be a little bit more complicated because we might need to do divisions and things like that. So we can count a lot of different things. In this example, we're going to keep it simple. We're going to count work orders. So what we're showing here is a count. So we've got a statistic, and then we've got a list. Okay, so that's what we've got here. We've got the list of work orders as well. So again, that can be very beneficial for some reporting out into Power BI, Tableau, to just have a very simple list of what's coming up. Okay, now this can be controlled to just count what's coming up in the next 10 days, 15 days. So we can piggyback some of the other options that I showed you along with a statistical count. Okay, so again, many different ways you can do it. So let me go ahead and use one of these projects, and I'll open this project up. And what I'll do is I'll just add a few more work order number references, and we'll let it recount the list. Okay, so I'll go ahead and go to the counting. And very, very simple. I can just put a few work order numbers in here and let it recount. So I'm kind of cheating. This is you wouldn't just make up a work order number. It would normally come from another system, but just for the simplicity of showing you the idea here is I'll go ahead and put those in. Now we could also filter work orders to only what is coming up. So meaning an activity that's not completed. Again, so you can piggyback many different parameters to come up with what you want to see. So let me just go to the right project. So I'll just ask it to recount this. I'm going to ask it to do it automatically. So this is another way that we often do it. So we might ask it to go ahead and run the counter. So it's a go. And as you saw earlier, with a few of the others, I just cleared the date. Okay, so you can have it with a flag like the go, or the other way that I showed you with the date being cleared. Okay, so those are pretty common how we let the user activate it. And then what it will do, it should update these with the few that I added. So I just made them shorter, so it should be a bit more obvious to us. And I'll ask it just to refresh, and it'll just take a minute to run through this and then give us a count. So I think I added 2 more work orders. So we expect to see the work order number jump to 7. And we should see the list updated is really how this would work. Okay. So again, these are usually things that are automated. So the user doesn't have to necessarily intervene. But because it's a webinar, of course, I need to try and get it to run live here. Okay, there it goes. So it ran through it. It updated that to 7 and it added the work order 512 and 411 to the list. Okay. So again, another great little utility. We have so many of these little utilities rolled out for different clients. So it's this sort of function is part of what we've built into our QA as well when we're counting different parameters and we're rolling them up. Okay, so this is just another little mini example of the kind of thing that you can do in the system. And it can save a lot of time for your schedulers. So let me do another one. So this one is related to resources and costs. So this one is really, really quite an interesting one. And we've done a lot of work with costing inside of P6, particularly with clients that have integrations. Now, because they want it to integrate usually from their accounting, but it could also be partly from their asset management, we're able to grab more data than what they might have been doing manually. So including resources, including costs. So I'm going to look at an example where we've got different exchange rates. So we've got our project currency might be a different currency than Canadian. Our corporate reporting currency is Canadian. But we've won these projects in different parts of the world that are going to be run in British pounds, US dollars, Filipino pesos. So you can have a variety of different project currencies in this example, but we're going to convert them all back to our corporate reporting, which is going to be Canadian. Now, you might say, well, I can do that already in P6. Yeah, you can have one conversion to one conversion. That's it. Now, that doesn't always work. We may need different conversion rates for different projects for a different currency. So in this example here, I may want the Filipino peso to be a different conversion rate on a different project because the time frame that it's in, or maybe the agreement that we've made. So in this example, I can change the exchange rate and I can get it to recalculate and it'll redo the estimates here, okay? Now, let's touch on some other factors that our clients want to track. So we often have an overhead, we often have a profit target. Now, that we usually have the cost, expected cost. So here's the example here. Now, we have a factor for the overhead, factor for the profit, and those three total together is what we sold the project for. Okay. So we are using these different factors to calculate our sell cost, which is what we're communicating with the client. And this is all being done automatically inside of P6 using the calculator. Now, let me open this up and let's dig into this a little bit more. And let me just go back for 1 second and explain the sort of things that we've done with different clients. So these are, again, food for thought because we've got clients with a lot of different pricing components. Okay, so this is an example where we've got it somewhat simplified, where we've got one currency that we're running the project in, but we have clients that run different purchase orders in different currencies. So we have different exchange rates. for up to 5 to 10 different currencies that they're running. Okay, so we can get pretty elaborate. We've done many different scenarios. We've got other scenarios where we have clients with joint ventures and they have different working interests or percentages that the different joint venture groups are paying for different components of the project. So, for example, a well project where we've got certain groups paying for the well, certain groups paying for the pipelines, other groups paying for parts of the facility. So we've got different working interests and different factors for different cost codes as well. So we've done a lot of elaborate costing in P6 using P6-Calculator. So again, these are just food for thought ideas here. So let me go into the activities and let's actually look at what types of things that you can do with P6-Calculator on the exchange rates. So, so some of you might say, well, we don't necessarily have the same profit. We don't necessarily have the same overhead across our whole project. So we've done some pretty interesting things on resources with clients. So we've got different overhead and profit margins for different projects. So what we're trying to show you here is instead of just using the price per unit, which we only have 5 out of the box in P6, we've actually extended this so that we can have multiple resources with different rates and different overhead and profit margins for different projects. This is project 11. This is project 22. And you can see I've got different calculations. So that ability to extend the resource dictionary to compensate for different rates, different overhead and profit calculations is huge. And we've done that for many, many different clients in different factors. Okay. So I've got that particular resource on this activity. And this is a certain project that I'm using my certain factors. So these are all being calculated automatically. So my quantity is calculating off of the cost, and it's calculating the sell rate with the overhead and profit margins all automatically. And then that does a roll up so I can see all my cost, all my profit, all my overhead, and my sell rate. So all of this is happening automatically. So if I change the quantity on this and I ask P6-Calculator to run again. So I moved that from I think it was 40 to 80. So I'll save that and I'll ask it to rerun. So it's going to recalculate all of these different factors here. So it's going to redo my cost. So my cost is my 80 with 7 units. $7 is the cost for each of the quantities. And it will redo all the calculations inside here and roll them up automatically. I could change the rate in the resource dictionary. So instead of being $25 for this particular resource, I could change that. I could change my overhead and profit calculation as well, and it'll redo all of them across the board. Okay, so this is hugely powerful. And then we have an override concept usually. So for a particular activity, perhaps that overhead, I want to perhaps take advantage of a particular activity. Maybe it was a change and I want a better profit margin on it. So I could override it as well. So that's another thing that we've done for different clients so that they have a very dynamic costing model inside of P6. So they don't need to necessarily have a bunch of other systems that they're interacting with. And this can be hugely beneficial to get a change into a client's hands very, very quickly. So this gives you some food for thought. Again, with costing, we've done many different flavors with working interest, with different foreign exchange rates. Now, in this example, I've got it at the project level, but we've got examples where we've done it down to the resource. So a particular work package might be purchased in US dollars from a US contractor, and that calculates back to Canadian. And then another work package, maybe a special satellite or something, we're buying that from China. We can use that currency and we can calculate it back into Canadian. So we've done many different things on costing, and it's all automated, which is the benefit. So the scheduler just has to set up one or two factors and then it just calculates automatically. Okay, so I think I showed you quite a few different ones. There are more that we have. We have automatic calendar generators. We've got automatic activity code generators. So we allow you to create activity codes that are project specific. We merge those into global codes, and that helps you with reporting. So we've got a lot of different things that we've built in Calculator over the years. And again, I think the easiest way is just to take this as a food for thought webinar. And from here, if there are things that you know that you'd be interested in trying, reach out and then we can see whether we've already done it for another client or done something pretty close and similar, in which case it doesn't take much to deploy a new utility. Generally, for most of them, it might take 4 to 8 hours at most of work just to get a new one in, test it with you, and then deployed. Okay, so they're generally pretty quick for us to create new different calculator functions. We've got auto work week tagging. So we've got clients who want to know what work week of the year we're in. So we've got auto tagging for that, which feeds reporting. We've got auto tagging for in-service dates and counting in-service dates for electrical utilities when they've got permits on and off. So we've got all these auto flaggings and calculatings for those sorts of things. Again, just to make it easier to see them, count them, report on them is really what we've done. And we've got a lot of flavors of it. Okay, so I don't see any questions yet. So I don't know if that means it was easy to understand, hopefully. But if there are any questions or things that you know that you've been interested in exploring, just go ahead and chat them into the questions and I will tackle them. So we took a look. Let me touch on some of the benefits that our clients have seen. And so we've talked a bit about them. Let me make sure I'm sharing my presentation. Yeah, I should be. Okay. Before I jump to case studies, let me go ahead and just run through a few of the benefits that we've had in the feedback. So effort, okay, significantly reduces effort from manual work that people were doing in some other ways, either using global changes or using Excel calculations and then trying to load them in, this sort of thing. So being able to have these things automatically happen and bring more value to what's being done as P6 is the big thing here. And then the efficiency in streamlining the updating and the reporting and having it done consistently. Okay, because if you have built things with global changes, you know, first of all, it only works on the activities you have open. So it's easy to make a mistake. And if you forget to run them, then you're hooped, and maybe not everyone knows how to run them. So you end up putting responsibility on a senior person who is busy, and things couldn't happen. So this really gets rid of all those potential room for error that you might already be experiencing. The visibility, so the different tracking capability, automatic, so that you can coach people, you can fill the gaps very quickly. Those are huge wins. And to be able to do that with a very quick layout, like I was showing you, and see where the problem is rather than digging in too many different layers, huge time saver. Easily save you 5 to 10 hours a month, easily, if you've got a large group doing lots of different things. And then, of course, the key is on the reporting, right? The fact that the reporting is coming out consistently, that budgets and different forecasting is done in the same way consistently, with especially without putting an extra load on your schedulers, is a huge benefit. For some of our groups, it's also allowed them to do the reporting more often, which is a big thing, right? When you can see whether there's a bust in the schedule or a problem, if you can see that even a few days before you normally would, that can make a big, big difference in how quickly you can react to the issue and correct it. And of course, the fact that you can automate and capture additional data that you might not have been doing in P6, that you might have been doing in Excel or Access. And this centralizes it, it automates it, so you can get rid of other systems that you're maintaining. So that can be a huge benefit. For one of our clients, we got rid of 3 other systems that they were trying to manage, none of which were working very well because it was just too many things and too much complication. Um, I talked about the calendars being dynamically generated. This is an interesting one. I wasn't able to show it in this particular day, this presentation, but we certainly can show it in a future upcoming calculator webinar. But generating automatic calendars based on 2 or 3 different crews' schedules can be very powerful on making sure your schedule is safe and accurate as to when work will proceed. So that can be a very big one as well. So case studies. So I touched on a few electrical utilities. I talked about the automatic scheduling, moving the weekly data dates, making sure that the reporting was consistent. It got rid of forgetting to update and having schedules that were not all updated to a consistent level. Now, that also made their work processes more easy to replicate, and also some of the statistic calculations that I mentioned. I showed you the foreign exchange rate, and we have many different examples of that. We have at least 5 or 6 very, very different ones that come to mind immediately in different sectors. So drilling, construction, specialty satellite construction, and manufacturing. So those are some that come to mind immediately. So we've got a lot of different exchange rate types of examples. Manufacturing one as well. So I explained the different work packages being purchased in different currencies, all calculated and forecasted in their own exchange rate, as well as the project reporting and corporate exchange rates. And I touched on the archiving. Okay, so we've got a lot of different archiving examples and automatic archiving for mining, for oil and gas, for electrical. So those are some that come to mind, and they've all got different flavors of archiving that we've done. Yeah, so I think we'll leave it at that. And forecasting. So different working interests for different companies that are participating, so that you can give them an automatic report on what they owe on the actuals and what's coming up. Very, very helpful in getting that centralized reporting from one system. Okay, so in the last hour, we ran through Calculator very quickly, but hopefully you saw some food for thought ideas that your team could likely take advantage of, or Maybe you've heard a few glimmers of hope on things that you're struggling with, that maybe we can get automated. And again, for maybe a few $100s a month, you could probably save that in terms of the scheduler's time and even just the effort and frustration that you go through. It could well be worth it for your company to explore that. So Emerald's been a full service partner for 27 years. We've got a lot of different add-ons to P6, to Unifier. We had many to contract management as well. So explore our webinar series. And there's we don't build these utilities just to build them. We've built them because enough clients needed something to fill a gap, whether it's on updating. So we've got our TAPs, which is our barcode scanner updating. There's no faster way to update P6. CAPS, which is our tabular updating on the web. Scrubber, which allows you to take your imports that you're getting from different clients and scrub them so that you don't get a bunch of stuff that you don't need into your database. If you're a contractor, you could actually scrub the exports before you give it to a client. So maybe you don't want to share your costs like I've shown here. You can scrub all those out automatically before you give them the schedule. Okay, so those are a few. Yesterday we did our QA tool, which is a fantastic tool to help you get your quality of your schedules up. Okay, so take a look at our website. We've got a lot of utilities that will bring a lot of value really quickly to your team, and they're sold in different models. The calculator, as I mentioned, is a monthly subscription onto your database, and depending on how many things you're doing, the price is a little higher. But per point that it's monitoring, it's less than $1 of monitoring and impact. So it usually adds up very, very quickly on the return on investment. So take a look at our webinar series. And in terms of contacting us, I've got my email there. So if there's something that looks interesting, you can reach out that way and see if there's something we've already built for another client that you can take advantage of. And that's how we use this tool. We share the pieces that we build for each client. They become available for others, and it gives us a good launch off point for many other utility components that we add to the system. Good. So I don't see any questions yet. If there are some questions, go ahead and chat them in, and I'll try and tackle them. I'll stay on the line for another minute or two to see, but maybe any questions aren't coming up right now. So I'll just put one more last question up. So if there are things that you want to explore, if you want to explore pricing, if you want us to have a conversation with your group about different things, just let us know in this little quick question, and that just helps us know how to stay in touch, how you'd like us to follow up from this webinar with you. And of course, you can reach out directly to my email if there's something that you want to explore further. So I'll stop